Hey guys, you're watching TechEdit. I'm Basil and this is the Xiaomi Mix Fold 4. I've had 2 weeks with this phone, and if I could pick any one phone to use as my main phone, this would be it, which is impressive considering how much competition there is, not least of all in the foldable space, from the Vivo X Fold 3 Pro, Honor Magic V2 and V3, OnePlus Open, and of course the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 6. Now, the Xiaomi Mix Fold 4 isn't the best phone by any stretch across the board. The camera isn't the best in every situation. It also doesn't have the best software, and it's also not the best spec. So why would I still pick it over all the other phones? It's not even out in the UK. This is a China import. I'm going to dive into all of the details with my experiences in the next few minutes, but before I do, a quick shout out to our sponsor Surfshark. Thank you for sponsoring this video. If you're watching this video, there's a very good chance that you too are a techie, someone with a phone, a laptop, a tablet, maybe even a second phone. I know with my old VPN, every time I activated it on one device, I'd get kicked off another, and it was incredibly frustrating. But Surfshark supports unlimited devices, which for me is priceless because doing what I do, I change my phone every few days. Now, I need a VPN because I travel a lot with work. I'm always on public Wi-Fi networks, and I want to keep my IP address and browsing data private. Plus, with 24/7 support and a 30-day money-back guarantee, you're only going to be committing to Surfshark if you like the service. And when you do come to sign up, if you use the code TechEdit, you can get 4 months free on a 12 or 24-month plan. All the details in the description below. Back to the Xiaomi Mix Fold 4, and if you saw my unboxing video with the phone where I also talked through the setup process of a Chinese device, then you'll know the box has your basics. It has the phone, has a case as well, a 67-watt charging brick, Chinese obviously, and a USB-A to USB-C cable, a little bit of literature, but not much else. The version I have was imported from Trinity Electronics, cost the equivalent of £1,360, so definitely not cheap, but significantly less than a Z Fold 6. In addition, I got this Xiaomi composite fiber version with 512GB of storage, 16GB of RAM, so that's what all these tests are based on. A big reason why the Mix Fold 4 is my favorite foldable is because of the design. The Mix Fold 2 was stunning, best design at the time in my opinion. The Mix Fold 3 pared things back a little bit. It felt a bit chunkier, a bit blockier, less streamlined, but Xiaomi's brought it right back with the Mix Fold 4. It's available in 4 colors, 3 glass colors, black, blue and white, and this Xiaomi composite material, which is the lightest of the bunch. In my opinion, it is definitely the best of the bunch. The back has a gorgeous pattern to it, gold accents. The spine has a Kevlar-like finish, but it's textured to the touch as well, so you have tactile and visual flourishes that really do make it edge ahead of the other colors for me. It's so thin and light. Every time I pull this phone out of my pocket and start using it, the geek in me is a little bit giddy. 226 grams, 4.6 millimeters when unfolded, 9.5 millimeters when folded up. Incredible engineering from Xiaomi. Beyond just being thin and light though, it is beautifully comfortable to use. The glass on the front is curved a little bit on all 4 sides, so it has a really nice feel when you swipe on it. Also, it's the most comfortable foldable to use left and right-handed. If you actually look at the hinge tapers in at the bottom and top, and that is really cool because no other foldables do it in this way. So it has the softest feel in the palm, left or right handed, out of any foldable. Honestly, the attention to detail is kind of mind-blowing here. There are some caveats. The polished frame is pretty slippery, especially when you come to open it and you've got some pretty sweaty hands. You kind of have to dig your finger in between the screens to wedge it open. The case does fix that a little bit with its matte frame, but if you don't want a case on it, there is that slip factor, so it looks sleek, but it isn't without some drawbacks. There's Xiaomi Shield glass on the cover display, a pre-fitted screen protector, a case in the box with no kickstand FYI, and there's ultra-thin glass on the main display, but you're still gonna get dings if you drop something on it, so do be careful. All flexible foldable displays are prone to damage. It's also IPX8 water resistant as well, which is great to see. The hinge smoothness as well is really worth commenting on. I love how consistent the resistance is throughout the range of motion. Some foldables you open and you have to wedge them, then they're easier mid-fold, then they're really difficult at the end. This, you've got a much more consistent smoothness throughout. It isn't the most steady hinge mid-folded. Samsung's is kind of like a locked in place. Personally, actually, I don't love that. Yes, it feels a bit more secure, but it doesn't feel as fluid. It doesn't glide anywhere near as smoothly as the Xiaomi Mix Fold 4. If there is one downside to how this phone looks, it's a crease down the center of the main display. It's significantly more visible than the OnePlus Opens crease, for example, a little bit more visible than the Vivo X Fold 3 Pro and Honor Magic V3, but it's about on par with the Galaxy Z Fold, maybe a little bit less visible. It's a different kind of crease. It's less deep, but it's a little bit wider. There are people who will care about this. I am not one of them. When I'm using it, watching content, I don't notice it. When the screen's off, yes, absolutely I notice it. But how much do I care? Very, very little, because I know what I'm getting is, like I said, the best looking foldable that I've ever used in my life. And that's kind of a compromise that's very, very easy to get over for me. You'll have to decide if it is for you. And besides, looking beyond the crease, the screen sizes are excellent. I really like big screens. So the fact you get a 6.58-inch display on the cover screen with a 21:9 aspect ratio, so very familiar to people who've used Xperia phones, for example, but it's actually a bigger screen than the Xperia 1 Mark IV. And on the inside, you get a 7.98-inch display, means you get much, much more space to do what you need to than on a Z Fold 6, for example. Both of the screens are OLED with really inky deep blacks that look glorious, vibrant punchy colors, great brightness, peak HDR brightness of 3000 nits, peak day-to-day brightness of 1700 in high brightness mode, which is excellent for a foldable. Consistency across both also extends to the clarity, 418 pixels per inch, so you've got a really nice sharp display whether open or closed as well. Both displays do support HDR10 and Dolby Vision, however not in Netflix. You just get full HD video in Netflix, which is still better than some competitors like the Red Magic 9, which just caps out at SD. And so the size and quality of both screens just come together really well, meaningfully adding to the experience when you open up the phone. The speakers are also decent too. There's a lot of clarity there and they get nice and loud. There isn't as much depth as thicker phones like the Galaxy Z Fold 6, for example, but I didn't mind that too much. What I did mind about the speakers is you've got one on each half of the phone. So when you're holding the phone for gaming, you're always covering one speaker up if you're holding it sideways when the phone's open. So that's a bit annoying. I would have loved them both to have been on the same half, and then I would have never covered one up because I could just turn the phone around. So you're always going to get a little bit of sound muffle, but the fact you do have stereo speakers is decent, I guess, but it's also the minimum that I would expect from a foldable, especially a foldable of this price. Onto the camera system, and you've got a 50 megapixel primary, a 50 megapixel 2x telephoto, and you have a 10 megapixel 5x telephoto. Pulling out to the ultra wide, there's a 12 megapixel fixed focus ultra wide, so no close-up macro photography. The main sensor has a 1/1.49 inch size, and it's one of the largest in a foldable. The Vivo X Fold 3 Pro is bigger, but still it's very commendable. The lens is also super wide, f1.7 with OIS, so it's unsurprising, as I'm going to come on to, that the primary camera performs brilliantly. There are also a few photography highlights within the interface. Of course, there are the Leica features, Leica Vibrant or Authentic. You also have Leica's Portrait mode and Leica Master mode, so you can capture video with a blurry background, blurrier than the natural aperture will create. And you can also shoot raw photos on the main camera at full 50 megapixel resolution, which is very, very seldom seen on any smartphone. In the real world, Xiaomi and Leica's photo processing is so reliable. Just like with the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, you kind of know what photo you're going to get after you've been using this phone for a few days because the processing is so consistent. And so while it doesn't always produce better shots in the competition, in the day it always produces more reliable shots and makes the 4 cameras feel more like a system rather than 4 individual cameras. Photos typically look very classical. Xiaomi and Leica aren't afraid of a little bit of contrast to give you a more traditional photographic look than the heavy HDR look of some camera phones today. Now, I said it's my favorite phone in the day because the Mix Fold 4 is a weaker zoomer at night than the Vivo X Fold 3 Pro and the OnePlus Open. You can see from this picture of a church taken at a 10x zoom, the Mix Fold 4 defaulted to the primary camera. Yes, it's low light, but you have a 2x and a 5x optical reach on this thing. Meanwhile, I'm getting a mid-range kind of crop, just cropping into that primary camera. That's where this camera is weakest. Nighttime zooming. But if you're happy with that wide angle, the primary camera is great at night. The ultra wide is respectable as well, even if it isn't best in class. If you're wondering how it stacks up to other phones, the Galaxy Z Fold 6 does have a wider ultra wide, but the Xiaomi Mix Fold 4 edges ahead in pretty much every other way. It has a better zoom, it has better nighttime performance as well, and I just prefer the photo processing, less Samsung-y, less oversaturated colors with a little bit less sharpening as well. As for the X Fold 3 Pro, it's a little bit less predictable, especially on white balance. The zoom at night is better, much better than the Mix Fold 4. However, in the day, the zoom can be better on either. It depends on the situation and what you're zooming on. The X Fold 3 Pro's ultra-wide photos are also the best at night out of all the cameras I tested. Finally, the OnePlus Open really holds its own considering it launched last year. At night, the zoom bests the Mix Fold 4. In other situations, the processing is a little bit more pared back, a little bit more subdued, but you still get really decent detail. And in the day, the zoom falls maybe a little bit behind the Mix Fold 4 in certain situations, but both of these phones as an overall experience are pretty on par for photo quality. The Mix Fold 4 can capture up to 8K resolution video, 4K 60, and it's really good if you stick to one camera at a time, namely the primary camera. The 2x telephoto can also do a really respectable job creating nice depth separation, and it's got a nice near focus so you can capture great product photography and macro-esque, almost macro-esque video. Unfortunately, it's held back at the 5x range and beyond because that 10 megapixel camera isn't native 4K. 4K is 12 megapixels and you can't switch between cameras mid-recording as well, so there are limitations. But irrespective, if you're sticking with the camera that you start shooting with, footage should look really decent in the day, and at night stick with a primary camera for the best looking results, and it's competitive for a foldable. If you're thinking about picking the Mix Fold 4 up or any foldable for vlogging, don't be put off by 1080p video from the selfie cameras, the one in the cover display and in a display. That's great for video calls, but it isn't great for vlogging. However, because you can open the phone up, activate the cover screen to give you a preview of your footage, and just hold the phone up. Using the primary camera for vlogging, you can create beautiful depth separation. Here's a clip I recorded. This is a selfie video being shot on the main camera of the Xiaomi Mix Fold 4 in 4K. Even though the front cameras can't shoot 4K video, the main camera can, and because with foldables like this, I can open it up and really comfortably frame myself with the cover screen. As you can see here, it pulls up a very nice looking video, natural depth separation, optical image stabilization, especially when I'm not walking and it doesn't have to work too hard. It is kind of a vlogger's dream. You may notice that the microphone did struggle to pick up my voice a little bit. It's definitely worse than the other foldables I tried, the Z Fold 6, Vivo X Fold 3 Pro and OnePlus Open for the microphones, but for video it was excellent. If you are thinking about this for vlogging, therefore, if Xiaomi doesn't tune that so it prioritizes voice voices from that rear microphone, because there is one by the cameras. You definitely will want an external microphone for quality, but the picture it can record for vlogs is excellent. Any gamers out there, you've got a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 in here, and like I said, 16 gigabytes of RAM in this version, though the base capacity is 12 gigabytes, and it benchmarks very, very well, very nicely, like a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 phone. But when you put it through stress tests, when you look at frames per second readers after you've been gaming for a while, those frame rates will drop more readily than a Z Fold 6 or thicker phones, including the Vivo X Fold 3 Pro. So if you don't mind having graphics settings slightly pared back, 45 frames per second on Wuthering Waves, Genshin Impact, Diablo Immortal, for example, you'll be absolutely fine with this. However, if you do want the best, most consistent graphics, you definitely will not want a foldable, to be honest. Look at phones like Red Magic 9S Pro. But if you do need a foldable, the Z Fold 6 is excellent in that respect, as is the Vivo X Fold 3 Pro. Controllers also pair great with foldables, whether you want a native Android experience like Diablo or Solo Leveling Arise or an emulator. And I found the Backbone 2nd Gen was really great for a plugged-in controller. The 1st Gen didn't fit so well, but if you want a Bluetooth controller, the Nacon MG-X Pro worked really nicely, creating a top-heavy experience. Xiaomi's foldable interface definitely falls behind the competition. It isn't as well optimized for big screens as Oppo, Vivo, Samsung, OnePlus's alternatives. There's no bar at the bottom for quick access to your applications. However, this is the first Xiaomi Mix Fold phone that has a Google Split keyboard natively with split screen multitasking, etc. is there. One saving grace of the interface is Xiaomi puts 3 dots above an app when you're using the main display, and so you can tap them and easily chuck it to one side or another for split screen view. And you can also make it a floating window or fill up the whole screen if you're already in split screen view. Anyone interested in AI features, the Mix Fold 4 falls behind. I care about language features, so website summarizers, transcribers. I'm not surprised this phone doesn't cater for my English needs. After all, it's a Chinese phone. There are some imaging features. They weren't great in my experience, but when it comes to software, this covers the basics, but it definitely doesn't exceed anything we've seen before. It's also worth noting there's no Android Wear support on here. Currently, Android Auto doesn't work, unfortunately, but that may change in the future. Notifications come through a little bit slower. That's the case with all Chinese phones, especially apps like WhatsApp that aren't natively kind of like used in China as much. And I've got a Google Pay card set up. So if you're thinking about picking this up for NFC payments, you'll be fine. Chinese phones don't tend to have eSIM support either, though you do have a dual SIM slot at the bottom, no micro SD card support. You can easily make it through a full day with a 5100 milliamp battery on the Mix Fold 4, bigger than many non-folding phones, which is super impressive for the size of this thing. You can watch a 30-minute YouTube clip at around 50%, just a little bit less brightness, and that only drained the battery by 3% when the phone was open, so that's the inner main display. It also charges nice and quickly. 67-watt wired charging will give you a full charge in just under an hour, and it also has 50-watt wireless charging if you have a compatible Xiaomi wireless charger. So in summary, hopefully that helps you understand why this is my favorite foldable out now. So much of it has to do with the design and the experience of just using it day to day as a phone. But I really like that consistent camera. I really like the screen sizes, and just, yeah, the design is really the thing that edges it over the competition. Talking about the competition, just finally, very specifically, the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold wipes the floor with this thing when it comes to software. The AI features are just one part of it, but the foldable optimization really is excellent. And also on that inner screen, you have pen support as well, though it is a fair bit chunky, and for me personally, the smaller screens just don't do it for me. big hands. I really appreciate the larger displays on the Mix Fold 4. Meanwhile, the X Fold 3 Pro from Vivo gets a lot right. You've got those in-display fingerprint scanners. That bigger size is a bit chunkier. It definitely feels weightier and thicker, but it's a little bit better for gaming. The cameras can be more standout, especially when zooming in at night. A little bit less consistent though, especially with the white balance. But typically the Vivo X Fold 3 Pro, because it's available in India, is going to be very attractive because you can import it with full Android Auto support. Though make sure you're getting the India variant and not the Chinese variant. And yes, that also covers Android Wear and all the other features that don't tend to work on Chinese phones. As for the OnePlus Open or Oppo Find N3, they're both excellent choices, virtually identical, and they're competitive with the Mix Fold 4, though the slimness of the Fold 4 edges it ahead ever so slightly, as does the 8 Gen 3 power in here, though if you play for long periods, the throttling on this thing will bring the two phones closer to parity if gaming is a key concern of yours. If you're wondering about the Honor Magic V3, yes, I have used it. I've used it for a while, but I haven't had it on my person, had my own accounts on there. So I'm going to hesitate to give too in-depth comparison, but I will say it is probably going to be the smartest choice for anyone who wants a slender phone in the future and lives in the West, because we are expecting to see a Western launch around IFA time, so September. So watch this space. That will probably be the main competitor to this as far as design goes, and the more sensible choice in the West, because unfortunately it doesn't look like Xiaomi will be launching the Mix Fold 4 in the West, so I hope I am wrong. So that's been my 2 weeks with the Xiaomi Mix Fold 4. I am gutted that I'm going to have to switch it out for my next review device, but I will have it close to hand. I love using it. If you've got any questions about it, please let me know and I will do my best to answer. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.